Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. And for those of you waiting on LinkedIn, I apologize. It seems that there's a global problem with LinkedIn Live right now. And it's a message that, I just received that for a couple of hours, the LinkedIn Live is having some challenges. So we never know. It might go live on LinkedIn in any minutes. Just fingers crossed. Otherwise, we will continue talking and this discussion on YouTube, and later we will share it on different social media. Yeah, let everyone know that we are going to only broadcast it on YouTube at the moment. Um, and back to our discussion, an interesting discussion about AI education. AI education is super important for different people, different reasons. We have like junior professionals and students would like to understand how can they become an AI expert and how they should make sure that they get the highest ROI by investing their time and money to learn the latest technologies. At the same time, we have C levels that some of them may not believe in AI. So building the culture of AI in a company is going to be very important. And last but not least, uh, people with different backgrounds, not necessarily an IT or mathematics background, wants to know how can they upskill or pivot to an AI, I guess, related career. So this is, I guess, the most important discussion for us right now. We have received a lot of questions from different people from our community about this particular topic. I can see a couple of comments coming from LinkedIn. It seems that it's live on LinkedIn right now. So if it is so, that's great. Hallelujah. Sometimes you need to get lucky in your life, and that's the case. So if you're watching on LinkedIn, I can also see your comments. So please um, say hi and where are you tuning in from. We would love to know more about our diverse community here on LinkedIn, and we would love to also understand about your background or maybe your career goals for the next couple of years. This is an opportunity for you, like another other events, to talk with each other and maybe network, connect with the other like-minded people on social media. These are the people that are kind of sharing the same journey like yourself. They are interested into the topic of AI, which is something we all, I guess, share in common here. That's awesome. I can see that some people are saying we're live, which is a great result for us. And thank you again for waiting and being patient on this particular challenge that we got. We have a great panelists here. These panelists are all thought leaders in technology and AI from different sectors, uh, private to large corporates. We would like to hear from their perspective and their experience in the AI education. We have people from Boston. Hi, Ben from Boston. Um, Sushil from Sydney, and we have um, Shelly from India. That's awesome. It's just great to see that people from different time zones, and some of them probably a little bit late, or some of them very early, are tuning in right now. So thank you very much. All right. Without further ado, I am going to start adding our awesome guests to the live feed. Here we go. Thank you very much for joining us, Scott, Lena, and Ashok. It's great to have you here. So first of all, I would like to start by asking you to introduce yourself a little bit and what is your relationship with AI or technology maybe in general. So let's start with Scott.
Hey everyone, I'm Scott Cedarbaum. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at INE. And I started my career out in a PhD program in political science. So I was interested in studying political phenomena from a data perspective, and picked up almost all of my formal training in statistics and data science through that program. Since then, I left with my master's degree and moved into basically roles that would merge technology and data together, usually to support sales or marketing schemes. That's how I ultimately moved into the chief marketing officer role at INE. INE is a company that I'm really passionate about because we offer really fantastic ways to be able to jump into technology roles. So whether you're somebody who's a novice or somebody who is already an expert looking to hone your skills, we have training on everything from cybersecurity to cloud computing to data science, and I think it's a fantastic company to be able to work with, because we do provide easy access to experts who are fantastic at teaching in these subjects. I'm glad to be here to talk about this about AI and how to get into AI across the globe.
Thanks, Scott. And we would love to hear from you, Lena. I had a great experience going into India and checking out the TCS office in Chennai. So thank you very much for hosting me. But yeah, we would like to hear more about your background and the relevance to AI and tech.
Sure. Thank you, Steve. And I hope you enjoyed your time in Chennai. It's one of our best campuses in India. So hello everyone. I'm Lena Valavalkar. I'm the Chief Innovation Evangelist at Tata Consultancy Services, TCS. And my job at TCS is to really explore opportunities at the intersection of business and emerging technologies like AI, provide technology insight to the organization, and build innovative products and solutions. And for that, I get to work with a very vibrant ecosystem of our in-house innovators, our partners in the startup world and academia, and our customers. My exposure to AI was during my master's degree at Penn State, when I got to learn a lot about computer vision, NLP, AI, image processing, robotics, and all of that. So happy to share from my experience, and good to be on this panel today. And Steve, thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Lena. And last but not least, Ashok. Could you please introduce yourself?
So thank you, Steve. I'm Ashok Balasubramanian, CEO at OpenWeaver. I work on the intersection of open source technologies and business and daily life. AI has been exciting. Interestingly, I learned it in college about 25 years ago. And then there was a lull. It was all COBOL and application programming. And back with cloud big data over the last 7-8 years, I think we've started seeing AI in real life, and been an exciting part of how we apply AI across different facets. So would love to share my perspective on this journey of AI, how it applies to business and daily life. Thank you, Steve, and panelists for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. So I'm going to jump into our first question, which is more about the public education and upskilling the public. Yuval Noah Harari is my favorite philosopher, writer. I mean, one of my favorite philosopher and writer, and he had some interesting ideas about the future of AI. So one of them is like people who are not just unemployed, but unemployable in the next going to be unemployable in the next 10 to 20 years, or maybe I guess by 2015. And he just believes that we are going to face this challenge in the next couple of years. And I would like to get your opinion about how AI is going to impact the workforce and the general public, and also what would be the solution here?
I think that's
So if
go ahead, Lina, please.
no, okay. Yeah, no, so I think it's a very interesting question, Steve. It's sort of addressed at two levels. So AI is not just one technology, it's a pretty vast field, and it affects every aspect of the business and society. So while I feel the public at large doesn't need to know the underlying technology, but it is good to know how it manifests in systems and applications that are consumed by them and what impact it is going to have on them. So if we take that famous analogy of AI with electricity, I think it is good for them to be aware of AI and the potential it holds to transform their lives. And just like electricity, I think the systems powered by AI are going to be very useful, revolutionary when used in the right way, and also dangerous when used in the wrong way. So I do believe that, yes, I think a general awareness of AI for the larger population is good to have. And if I can give you an example here, actually, we in TCS, we have done a very interesting program in collaboration with Singapore Management University to help senior citizens who lived alone age in place in their homes. And the homes were wired with non-intrusive sensors that tracked their activity and used machine learning to derive patterns of daily living and detect anomalies. So detect a fall or lack of activity that would then be flagged and have a caregiver respond. So here it was very important to give those individuals confidence that while their data was being collected, it was collected in a manner that did not compromise on their privacy and was used for a good purpose. So they don't really care about the technology, but it is important for them to know what it would do and how it would be used. So I think that's the whole human-centered AI discussion. So I think it's very important for the larger population to know.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
would like
Ashok, please.
to just put this in the mix, that like imagining the Tesla cars, the fully autonomous ones, are going to be available, and all the drivers are going to become jobless in, like, let's say 2015. All right. So what should we do with all the people that have been doing their job for a very long time, and they might not have the right skill to just jump in another thing? Like they just want to, like, I was an Uber driver last week, but right now I need to do something new. What would be that look like?
I'm a lot more hopeful for humanity. I think a great fan of Yuval. I think if you reflect back on Sapiens, he said, in hunter-gatherer, we hunted for 2 hours a day and chilled for the rest of the time. We moved into agriculture, maybe we tilled for 4 hours, 6 hours. Moved into industrial revolution, now into technology. We work 14 hours. So I think humanity will find way to do more work. So I'm very hopeful that we'll all keep ourselves busy, and maybe we will design decals for the Tesla, or build something for the Tesla. But kind of reflecting on what Lena said, I think two critical aspects. I think as in any revolution, I think these essentially shape the dynamics of how humanity works together to address common problems. So first, I would say is I think that awareness is critical. That you don't want to be left behind, because these one or two generations that go through that change are potentially going to be impacted the most. And I think students, young professionals in this generation are going to be at forefront of this change. So I think first acknowledging that there is a change coming in, and making yourselves ready in many different ways, I think are most critical. And like Lena said, I think looking at use cases that are closer to you. I think see how AI can impact, and getting ready with real life examples can set you to say, hey, if this curve comes, how can I be at the forefront of such a change versus being caught unaware? So hopeful, but be ready would be my 2 cents.
So, I have a couple of thoughts on this. One is, I think we are moving in a direction where AI is going to be more a part of our lives. And Steve, I like the example of autonomous cars, because I'm still skeptical as to how much autonomy cars will have in the next 25 years. Part of me would love to be proven wrong, to see that we have a fleet of autonomous cars out there that are driving people around. But I still think, like, when you look at what is being powered by AI today, it's more about simplification of decision making than it is about fully pulling humans out of decision making. And I think that's probably something that's going to continue, in my opinion, for at least the foreseeable future. So while there may be cars out there that are driving themselves, or you might take an Uber that will not have a driver necessarily in that car, I believe there will still be jobs out there working to control or help support the AI that's out there. I think from an educational standard, we have a lot of work to do. I think in general, the jobs of the future are going to require a better knowledge of coding, a better knowledge of how computers and humans interact, a better knowledge of math. And I don't think, at least, I can only speak on the US education standpoint, I don't think we do enough to be able to really tie together how math interacts with how systems work at a young age. We teach math as math, at least in the US. So, kids get in, they're learning 2 plus 2, they're learning multiplication. They're not really seeing how these foundations are going to allow them to do the really cool things that they love about technology in the future. And that's a big failing, because when people don't have that foundational math background, they're not able to pick it up nearly as easily when they hit 18 or 20 or 22, when they're starting university education, and might actually have the interest in being able to start doing these types of jobs. So I think we have a lot of work to do to be able to reinforce mathematics and systems education at a much younger age, at least from a United States context, because I've seen a number of comments here that seem a lot more promising in other countries, quite frankly.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Scott. No, that's a good point. I mean, as a technologist, I would like to stay optimistic about how technology is evolving and developing the most advanced, maybe autonomous cars or other interesting projects that we are seeing going forward. And a lot of people have very high hopes for Tesla. So I mean, that's just we already know about the current state of the AI. But let's just say that that's fine. We're not going to have the huge challenge in terms of AI making us jobless and having some threat into humanity. But apart from that, AI is an aggressive, interesting technology that is changing the way that we are living and working. And a lot of people are interested to get into AI, right? I would like to just get from the panelists, just get the sense of what is the best way to learn AI at this point, 2021.
I'll jump in there. I think there's a lot of approaches. What I find really fascinating, whether it's talking to and working with data scientists or people who are in artificial intelligence, people have gotten there over the last decade to 2 decades in a lot of different ways. Number one, the underpinnings of AI require really good understanding and storage of data. So, having a good data underpinning is going to be, I think, really critical to anyone who wants to move into the space. There's clearly a coding aspect. So being able to pick up Python or another language of interest is going to be really critical. And I think there's also, AI is a very large umbrella for a lot of different job functions, and a lot of different items that you can be building. So I think it's learning more about the space and understanding what part of AI do you want to be in. Do you want to be building models? Do you want to be building tools that are making decisions on models? Do you want to be building the human computer interactive piece that's on top of those tools? I think what's really fascinating about AI is that it's not simply one technology, but I think as the other panelists have said, it's hundreds of technologies. So I think it's figuring out what part of AI you want to get into, and then from there, there's a lot of different approaches to be able to get into it. Whether it's learning the statistical underpinnings that help make models smart, whether it's learning how to be a fantastic computer scientist, because it's not just about having the computers and the systems be able to make decisions, but they need to make decisions quickly or they're not particularly useful. So it's about optimization at the end of the day. Or whether there's a lot of AI functions that are mechanical, right? So how do you tie these computer decision making into mechanical devices or IoT? I think there's a lot of different ways of being able to get into AI, and it's going to really depend on what you find the most interesting as to what the answer of the best approach of getting in might be.
Yeah, I really agree with Scott. I think the earlier point that you have, building that foundation with math, I mean, that is the language of AI. So there is no, doubt that that has to be something that you have to go through to really understand the concepts. But many of people who sort of are at this stage of learning either have already chosen to take up, a different stream for their undergraduate education, or are already in the workforce. So there are various other avenues to get, to learn about AI and get into this field. So I think your point, Steve, was valid. As tasks get automated, there's certainly a need for reskilling and even upskilling the current workforce. So, I mean, to give you some numbers from TCS, so we are a large organization, I think, 500,000 plus employees spread across 46 countries and serving a diverse customer base of over 10 industries. And we enable very large scale transformation programs for our customers. So this massive shift that we see happening with digital technologies, AI in particular, so we really know what it means to reskill or upskill at scale. We ourselves have to be on top of emerging technologies to be able to help our customers on that journey. So our workforce engages also with a diverse set of stakeholders, and that was the point that you made, Steve, that whether you're interacting with the CXO level audience or further down, people really building those systems on the ground. So our workforce also engages with a very diverse set of stakeholders, and the needs and the skills that you need for that are quite different. So from our consulting partners, client directors who engage with the CXO level audience, partner with them on defining their digital or AI strategy, to our program manager actually lead very large AI transformation programs, plan activities and deliverables, and have to create the teams with the right mix of skills to deliver those, all the way to the ground force that really executes the projects, builds and manages the ML models, and also then the research and innovation side where the actual scientists would do a lot of the work in the background and those new solutions. But across all of this, I think one observation is that more than the tools and techniques, the contextual knowledge is becoming very important, especially when you're starting at a different stage in life, not really in your middle or high school. So a lot of in-house training programs, catering to that population are becoming very useful. So we, within TCS, we have about 600 plus AI, ML, data science, data engineering courses. But also, I think at that stage, and hopefully the people who are actually entering Build with AI hackathons are also probably that age group or that stage of their careers. I think leveraging a lot of this and even training non-AI engineers on the data science life cycle and helping them become AI ML engineers. A lot of it has to happen keeping their career goals and individual goals in mind. So creating a structured learning path with components that are, sequenced properly, guided paths based on the individual's role and who they, interact with, is at the core of the reskilling process for us. So really mapping the skilling efforts to the career opportunities and helping them understand where am I, what programs and courses will let me move to the next skill level and what opportunities it will open for me. So it's all sort of a different kind of thinking and path that you have to pursue when you're already in the undergraduate programs or as a part of the workforce and need to sort of update your skills.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Lena. Ashok, I know that you are involved in a lot of interesting open source stuff. So I would like also to mix, in your response to my question, also let us know the importance of open source in learning AI.
No, no, absolutely. I think great perspectives from Scott and Lena, and I would kind of try to reflect on. I think AI is like an ocean. I think you have to pick your role. I think everyone doesn't need to become a AI engineer. Everyone may not be as gifted in statistics or math. It doesn't mean that you are left out of the AI race if you're not a statistician, or if you, God forbid, you can't code Python. I think the beautiful part there is AI is smart, right? I think seeing so many technologies in open source, which is automating the ML pipelines. For example, when I was part of AI projects uh, 5 years, 6 years ago, the plumbing, data engineering, ETL, data cleansing jobs, they were like the hottest thing for data scientists. Everyone said, hey, you need to do that. And like Lena said, we had to train thousands of people to do those things. But fast forward today, I think our technologies are smart enough where it tries to sense, push in, unstructured data. It ingests and gives you a canvas to do things on. So I think understand your role in AI. I think absolutely you are an engineer. You want to get into core models, core technologies. So be it. Or if you are into using AI, if you're into business, art, and different other passions, find out a way how AI can augment. And I think great questions from the user group as well. I think Honey kind of said, "Hey, how does a doctor use AI?" Rolf had a comment that said, AI must be part of core curriculum. Completely agree. I think if you look at these two perspectives, yes, AI, like math, has been a core curriculum. AI awareness has to be a core curriculum, so people kind of understand how this works. How does a recommendation engine work? Even if you don't become an AI engineer, it's good to understand. Saying, "Hey, why do you see certain things on Facebook?" So that's useful. And maybe when you become a doctor, you will understand. Saying, what is the risk in using a recommendation engine as part of your diagnostics? So absolutely must be part of school. Understand your role. And be ready for how to apply it in different scenarios using different technologies, and open source is I think the way forward. So maybe we'll talk about it a little later on why open source is probably the best thing for things like AI. Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Ashok.
I was just going to jump in and say I think open source is critical from a learning perspective, and not just from a learning perspective, but I think on the other side of it, from a protection standpoint, what Ashok was saying, and I think it's really important to note, almost every business decision maker is making decisions or investing in something that has some sort of AI background. They might not even realize it, but like as the marketer on this panel, I spend or have people spending all day long making decisions around what to advertise and how to advertise, and almost all of those decisions are based on trusting that Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn, to all of our LinkedIn friends right now, are telling me that this is the best decision for me, that their recommendation engine on what I'm just going to spend money on is really important. As a consumer, you need to understand why those ads are coming to you and how they're coming to you. The number of times I see people, and this is where our education on what AI can and can't do and what's actually happening is not there. And a number of times I hear people saying like, "Oh my God, I went to the dentist today," and I was talking about going to the dentist, and then Facebook's serving me ads. Facebook's listening to my conversation. No, you probably searched for what a dental implant is, and you got a pixel, and Facebook is smart enough to understand what you've been searching for. So I think there is a level of AI conversancy or fluency that we need to be getting the general public to, because one, they're living in a world where it's impacting their day-to-day life. Two, they don't understand it nearly as well as they should, given how much it impacts their day-to-day life. And three, I think they're fearful of it in ways that don't make sense, and they're not fearful of it in ways that should make sense. And that puts consumers and business decision makers alike in a really weird position when trying to make sure that they're keeping themselves safe and making decisions that are the best for their company, their employees, or their families.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Scott. I would like to right now ask our audience to let us know if they are pursuing AI education in higher education, universities, or they're doing any courses online. I would like to know like the general sense of from the audience, like what they're doing to learn AI right now, if they are learning about it, or if not, if they have any plans to learn it from any of the sources available. And back to you, Scott. I would like you to also let us know the roles of universities in teaching AI. Are they still relevant? Does it worth it going for I don't know, 4 year or 5 years degree in a university and to learn about AI?
So that's a great question. And first of all, as you all are typing about whether you're getting AI training right now and from where, I'd also be curious: are you pursuing it on your own, or is your employer helping you pursue that, either by encouraging you, providing financial support, or even providing those courses? Because I always find that interesting to see what's motivating and how people are paying for that education. I think universities play a role in AI education, or at least they can. There's a ton of great programs out there that are dedicated to teaching data science. Obviously, computer science programs, are still extremely relevant for teaching people how to program, how to understand how computers think about how code is produced and ultimately rendered into programs and compiled. But I think there are more ways to pick up this type of education than simply going to university. Like I said, there's companies like mine, INE, where we provide a much cheaper option to be able to pick up the essential skills behind data science and AI. So for $750, all of our data science per year, all of our data science courses, which are self-led through instructor-led videos and labs and workbooks, are available for people throughout the world. You don't have to worry about attending. There's no need to have a formal high school education or a bachelor's degree if it's a master's degree program. We want to meet you where you are. And I think there's going to be more acceptance for people who are teaching themselves how to do this type of work. And speaking as a data scientist, not necessarily an artificial intelligence engineer, I don't know anyone who has formal education in data science that started in this work, 5 or 10 years ago. Obviously, it's more common today as those programs have popped up. But I think there are so many different ways of being able to teach yourself, including jumping into open source code and seeing how other people solve problems that you might want to solve yourself, whether it's ML pipelines or how somebody might write a certain model, how they might work with a certain algorithm. I think there are way more options to be able to learn this than jumping in and taking that formal university route.
Thanks, Scott. Any other opinions?
Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Ashok.
Go ahead, Lena, please.
Sorry. No, I agree with Scott. I think we don't need a degree, but I feel we certainly need the knowledge. So what we see happening, I mean, there are two trends, I think, and Ashok also referred to that. What was required maybe 5 or 10 years ago, let's say a lot of the low-level coding is now already done by those low-code, no-code platforms. So the data science roles itself require a higher level of skill and the ability to understand the context of the problem domain. The second is, if you see the rise of the edtech sector itself, I think that is proof that this mode of learning works. It's available, and people prefer to learn on the go alongside their day job without necessarily enrolling in a formal degree program at a university. But one word of caution also is that a lot of these courses, I think you have to be careful how and when you, which ones you pick, because they end up teaching a lot of BI in the guise of AI. So the AI data science is much more than just BI and being, able to manipulate and process data. There is a lot more to it. I think that level of awareness needs to be created. So, yeah, Ashok, yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Lena. I think great perspective. I studied electrical engineering in college, and over the couple of decades, I've done many jobs, everything other than electrical engineering, probably. So I think it's how you temper expectations. I think universities have a role. I think what I gained from a university essentially is a structured thinking, problem solving, some sort of a diligence in approaching things. I think if life lessons have given you that, I think that replaces university. So my view is, unless you're a student currently, don't go to a university to study AI or any technology, because all these technologies, and like Lina said, now have cycles. What you think is AI today will change in 2 years. So by the time you enroll in a university, start a course, finish a course, the course would have changed, so you can't go back to university. So if you take that example, you always need to be in a university which is online. And I do see most of our guests have kind of said, that they're doing a Coursera or some sort of an online learning. So I would temper expectations that way. Have some sort of a educational background that gives you, or life's lessons absolutely give you some sort of a diligence, structured problem solving. And online learning and experimentation is critical. I think look at models, look at libraries, take them, reuse, and try them out. I think trying out is probably a great teacher in addition to learning as well. So that would be my views on this.
Thanks. I would like to know more about diversity right now, because the learning is available for everyone, but the reality is we are seeing a huge gap between female in technology and the number of male that are taking the roles in data science and AI in particular. So first of all, is it important to have diversity in terms of making AI? And just in case if yes, then how should we make sure that we have a diverse team, not even just the gender, which is very important, but also race, culture background, socioeconomical background, and people might be, not have similar opportunities, marginalized groups and underrepresented groups in the society. So that's a little bit of a loaded question, but I would love to have your opinions on this.
I think the answer is a resounding yes, Steve. I think there is no question that says you could in any possible way ignore any form of diversity or even bias for that matter. There's a lot of different dimensions. I think there is diversity, there is bias. A lot of those things are coming in from a AI perspective, and where it becomes scary is that AI is kind of consolidating all these things, biases and diversities, and it can amplify it in a way. And that's the big debate going on around few models trying to control these big tech firms across the global population. So that's the big risk that is there. So I think there are two dimensions that I see. I think primarily is democratization. I think more people need to contribute into AI. And like Ray Kurzweil said, I think the day it approaches singularity, then we have a lot of issues. But I think we have many decades to get to singularity. But if you really look at it, I think as it becomes democratized, and that's where I'm hopeful about open source, because if you look at what the work we do at OpenWeaver and our platform can be, there are about 50 million, 100 million different libraries available for very similar use cases. So as more people start putting in effort around democratization by creating use cases, putting in their data, training the models differently, I think some of that bias gets auto-adjusted, and more people and more eyes are policing what happens. And open source kind of gives you that platform versus being a corporate-owned, proprietary, closed box solution, which is trained by a small set of people who might not have diversity representation. Open source kind of opens it out. It gives you a platform that says, hey, anyone can fork me, anyone can pre-train models, anyone can deploy use cases using it. It becomes that much more richer in accounting for diversity. And also that it is open source, you have more eyes looking at it to say, okay, I see an issue. And instead of waiting for a whistleblower in a large corporate to come out, you can start contributing towards fixing that bias. So that's where I absolutely hopeful about open source and open source enabling this concept of democratized AI development globally will hopefully auto adjust. Steve, that's my view.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I think diversity is a major problem in artificial intelligence, but I mean, being realistic, it's a major problem throughout the engineering world in general. I recruited for the University of Michigan in their EECS department, electrical engineering and computer science, prior to going to my grad program, and that program was 85% men. Very homogeneous from a racial background standpoint, and I think this comes down to a couple of things. One, math education is really critical, and we don't teach it well enough. I think anywhere, just across the globe, and we don't teach it well enough to different constituencies. The way I learn math might be very different than the way you learn math, especially as a child. And once people start losing access to base mathematical concepts, it becomes really difficult to learn the more advanced pieces that make going into engineering roles of any type, artificial intelligence, aviation engineering, mechanical engineering, any type of engineering, makes it that much more difficult to be able to pick up those skills, if not next to impossible as you get older, because those gaps just become increasingly difficult to fill in. That's number one. Number two, the access to education is very, very difficult for most people to be able to get. So, even if you can get access to through high school, higher education institutions are extremely expensive. So being able to have access to engineering style education that doesn't require you to go to a college or a university that could cost upwards of $50,000 plus US dollars, depending on where you are, is really important. And I think that's something that we as leaders across the world who care about being able to get people into these types of spaces and increasing diversity, we have to figure out ways to be able to reduce cost to this more advanced education. And I think the third piece that's really important when we're thinking about this is encouraging people of different backgrounds to understand why this is exciting from a younger age. We need to be pushing people into this, because there's two concerns I have when it comes to any AI platform that I've seen. Number one are the biases that people are bringing to them, and when you have more diversity, those biases tend to get watered out a bit because people are bringing in their own backgrounds when they're thinking about how to train these models. But I think the second piece is we have so many people that don't understand the logical underpinnings of statistics that are going into the space. And when I think I saw a commenter asking, what are the key components of people going in artificial intelligence if we're trying to come to a unified curriculum? And for me, one of the biggest pieces that we can be paying attention to is simply teaching people the logical fallacies and the actual underpinnings of statistical methodology, because it decreases the likelihood that models are used in ways that they're not designed to be used, which ultimately leads to a lot of the problems that we see in real world applications.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very tricky subject, diversity. So I completely agree with Scott on there is absolutely no getting from getting a good education and pursuing STEM courses does help you succeed in AI. But as far as diversity is concerned, I think now that AI is used as a tool for decision making, that is at least one big reason why we need to look at these aspects more seriously. And I think a conscious effort has to be made by organizations on ensuring diversity in the workforce, not just AI programs, And we see those efforts around us. So in TCS, we have launched a program, Rebegin, to bring back women who have been disconnected from their work due to maternity leaves, family responsibilities, and help them make a career comeback. I mean, that's, I'm telling you from personal experience. You take a 2 year break, the world has moved ahead, and it's very, very difficult for you to jump into the bandwagon at that point. So I think such focused efforts to really, bring them back, reskill them, upskill them as needed. Such focused efforts, I think, are needed on all aspects of diversity.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I guess I would like to have our final questions because of some complexity. We are kind of going over the time. And thank you for our audience to keep engaging with us. So the final question that I've also received a lot is about the technical skills that people need to have to become a successful data scientist or an AI engineer. I just adding them together. I know that they're not exactly the same roles, but in order to get into these roles, you usually need to have a similar kind of background. But also, I'm happy to, if you want to keep them separate. So what are the technical skills for a successful data scientist in 2022? Maybe top three for our audience that are very interested to learn and upskill. Scott, would you like to start?
Sure. So I'm probably the least technical person here, so I'll go from my perspective on this. But I think you've heard my piece on this. I think statistics education, or at least an understanding of statistical underpinnings, I think is really critical to anyone moving into either a data science or AI role, and that's going to be whether that's deep learning, neural nets, machine learning, or other artificial intelligence based procedures. I think I have a deep respect for statistics. I think it's really critical. Obviously, programming skills, I think particularly Python, are still really critical in the data science space. And I think the area that I think is still difficult, although I think getting easier on the data science end is pipelining of data and cleaning data. I think it has gotten a lot better than it was a decade ago, but I still think like the hardest part of anyone's job on the data science side is predictably getting the data where you need it to be for the ML processes to run, and then ultimately making sure the data is clean enough and consistent enough for those ML processes not to fail. So I think being able to understand those underpinnings of how to store and how to ultimately work with data, to me, is still really critical for people who are looking to get in, especially into more of an entry level job. If you are a computer engineer looking to move into AI or data science, you probably already have a lot of experience with that type of work. But I think if you're looking to come in from the ground floor, that to me is one of the biggest areas that makes a huge difference when I'm looking to hire data scientists.
Thanks, Scott. Ashok, would you like to give it a try and let us know what are the top technical skills that we would like to see in the 2022?
Absolutely. I think I would put kind of like what Scott said. I think the roles are on, or solutions are on three sides. I think first is the pipeline engineering, and I think Mohammed had a question that is it computer science or math? I think this first skill, like what Scott said, the pipeline, data DevOps, maybe some level of experimentation as well. I think those fall close into the software engineering kind of skill set. The second skill set is the core data science, which starts with as simple as data wrangling. You don't need to be a great data scientist, but if you have a combination of understanding data and some idea about business, you can start extracting, which features are more useful, what problem can I solve. So that core data science, starting with simple data wrangling kind of issues, all the way to choosing, experimenting with core models is probably the second skill. A third skill, again, there is a good spectrum. You could start with something what I call the business side. You could start with visualization, because even after you do all those great data science and models, you should be able to kind of present it in a way that makes sense, that business actions can be taken out of it. So as simple as things like visualization techniques, and all the way to communication with business, and how do you use it in business. So those are the three broad areas I see, Steve, in the investments that you should make in 2022, based on the role that you choose.
Awesome, thank you. Lina?
Yeah, no, I think those 2 points, just reiterating what Scott said on the foundation of math, statistics, there's no doubt. The technical skills, data management, manipulating data that Ashok talked about, and also a very important point on visualization. So how do you communicate that, whatever you synthesize, the inferencing ability, and then being able to represent it so that your stakeholders understand, what the outcomes are. And many times when you're designing real life systems, I think all these allied areas, so service design, psychology from humanities, and building these human-centric systems, or when you're really getting deep into NLP, it's useful to have knowledge of linguistics, for instance. So there are a lot of these peripheral things that also help.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that our audience got a lot of value and learned a lot. I enjoyed it, and hopefully we will continue these kind of discussions about the future of AI and interesting other topics later again with you guys. Thank you also our amazing panelists for joining us today. And have a great morning, evening, night, wherever you are.
It's been a pleasure, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.